Hey guys, I'm Kent and welcome back to my channel. So I thought it was time to do an update video on my 2019 Honda Monkey. So this is actually the first modern mini moto that I bought. I've had it on the channel, and it actually started the channel back over 3 years ago. I now have over 50 videos on this bike, and it's transformed quite a bit over that period of time. But over the last few months, I've made this my track bike, and I've made a few modifications that I haven't done a great job documenting. So I wanted to point out a few of the things that I did to make this a pretty capable track bike. I also got it on the Dyno, and it's making about 1 horsepower more than my Repsol themed bike. And I'll talk about some of the engine modifications that are helping me get that number. And then I've also been having some fun with it. Lex D. Fox, I think today, is also releasing a video of he and I as we were testing this against his Benelli bike. Obviously this is making quite a bit more power, but we had a lot of fun. And he and I have a lot of collaborations planned coming up. So let me dive into some of the changes that I've made on this bike recently, again, to make it track focused. So one of the most important things, of course, are the tires. I'm running the PMT medium compound tires, both on the front and the rear. This is the 100 width in the front and the 120 width in the back. Something that I noticed when I took my Repsol themed bike to the track for the first time, one is the Michelin Power Pures, while they're great tires on the street, weren't as capable on the track, although I also, that was my first time on the track, so you know that was a little bit of me too, but I've heard from some of the other guys that those aren't great tires to have on the track, whereas the PMT Slicks are pretty popular there. Something else that's important though is the width of the tires. On my other bike, I have a 130 rear tire because it looks cool, but I could tell a very noticeable difference in how the bike handles when you have such a wide tire in the back. So again, tires make a really big difference. I changed the fender here. This is really just for looks, but I had the carbon fiber full fender from Tyga. This one, I can't remember the brand, but it's from DROWsports, and I'll link in the description below, but it's just a lot smaller and neater, and I like the way that it looks. I also have down here the TST axle sliders. I have these both on the front and the rear. And I previously did a video on the Sato Racing frame sliders that I have for the Monkey. These are a Delrin material, and I'm hoping that they'll slide pretty well in a crash. Keeping them here though, just to protect the tank and some of the other stuff here in the center of the bike. I did a full overview and install video on the Tyga Rearsets. These are absolutely fantastic Rearsets, and I also have them on my other bike. I also cut off the triangle here on the kickstand. That was one of the first things to start scraping. I actually have already scraped away quite a bit of this rear set. I moved it up since my last track session 1 notch higher so that hopefully it clears it just a little bit better. I've got a really nice rear suspension setup. This is the Gears Racing H2 rear shock, and of course on the Monkey you need 2, one on both sides, unlike the Grom that just has a single one in the center. But the performance of these shocks are great. One change that I need to make though is that this is still running the stock bushings in the swing arm, so it's captured by a rubber grommet that limits how freely the swing arm can move. I actually just ordered the bronze bushings from Man in the Box. They should be here soon, and I'm going to get those installed. I'll do a full install and review video of the performance differences that change makes, but these shocks alone a marked difference over the stock suspension. And while we're at the back of the bike, I wanted to show you something that I've done with the rear lights, and I actually also did something similar with the headlight. But you need to tape your lights at the track. I think originally it was to prevent glass breaking and having glass across the track. Now I think it's just so that you're not posing a distraction to other riders. But instead of having to tape these up, I just put a little toggle switch here that trips the neutral wire so that when I'm on the track, I flip the switch and I don't have any lights. And this prevents me from having to throw tape on those. And I've got a similar one here on the headlight for the front light. Like my Repsol themed Grom, I installed the P34 caliper and stainless steel lines. DROWsports sells a mounting bracket for the Monkey so that all lines up very nicely, and the bite of this brake is much stronger than the stock one. I also installed the Brembo RC14 master cylinder, which has the external reservoir and of course did fresh .4 fluid. So the braking performance on this bike now is fantastic. For the handlebars here, I did a video on the Woodcraft clip-ons. I had previously done the Chimera FC clip-on bar like I have on my other bike. I decided to have it more in line with the front forks, which actually stemmed from a comment that somebody left on a video, and as I did more research, decided that it would be good not to have it too far forward. So I replaced it with the Chimera U-Bomb mount, which mounts similarly using 35mm clip-ons and still uses the same handlebar mounts that the Chimera FC mount does. But now that the handlebars are a little more forward and not as far swept back as the bars that I was riding, I feel like I've got a lot more control on the track. And while we're up here, I also wanted to show off the gauges. I did a full video on this Takegawa gauge. This is actually the same, I think, as the Koso RX3, although I prefer the interface that the Takegawa model has. But I also installed the Sport D, which gives me at a glance look at the things that I'm interested in seeing on the track, mainly engine temperature. I don't want to have my phone mounted on this as I'm riding it around the track for fear of losing it, and also just the vibration doing damage to the cameras. But this way I can, again, easily see engine temp, and I've also got the AFR displaying. This also monitors oil temp, so I'm getting temperature measurements from 2 different points. And otherwise, honestly, I'm not looking at the gauge too much as I'm going around the track. I'm trying to look at what turn's coming next. So up here at the headlight, I had already powder coated the outer bezel a satin black, but the Speedshop sent me a headlight where they also painted the inside of the light a satin black to finish off the look. It's not painted on any of the reflective parts, so it doesn't change how bright the headlight is, but it definitely gives it a much meaner look, and I think ties all of that together really well. And I'm planning on making some changes to the clutch. The 60% springs are great in how hard it bites. The problem is that I calculated that I'm probably doing between 120 and 150 shifts in a 15-minute session out on the track, and my fingers are just getting exhausted constantly shifting this bike. So I'm thinking about putting in some lighter springs. I'm also going to try out the Impact Tech easy pull clutch lever that I have on my stunt bike, because it's a single finger so that I have more hands on the bar, but it also has a different fulcrum or mechanism to make it a much easier pull. So I'm hoping that I have more leverage and that makes it easier. And then I think I'll also do either 30% springs, or I am considering doing a slipper clutch in this, because I would like to put in the aRacer quick shifter, which has both up and down shifting, but if you want to do downshifts, you really need a slipper clutch to not make the bike jerky and unstable when you're shifting down hard. All right, and so for the power of the bike, I took the bike up to Rider's Block and I had Chaz do an aRacer auto tune on the dyno, and he was able to pull out 15.35 horsepower. So I think that's almost exactly 1 horsepower more than my Repsol themed bike is. This has a Takegawa 181 big bore kit. It has from DROWsports, their CNC ported head with big valves, and I think the big valve head is the thing that makes the biggest difference there. On my Repsol themed Grom, I plan to try both the Yumanashi big valve head that's coming out, as well as the Monkey Father head. Adam has an extra one, so I think I'll bolt both of them onto that bike to see if I get that extra horsepower. My friend Doug was at Rider's Block recently and dynoed over 17 horsepower with a big valve head, although he was also running 100 octane leaded gas, so I'm not sure how much difference that makes, but definitely big power that he's getting out of that. So that's for that bike. But for this bike, again, I'm pretty happy with the 15.3 horsepower that it's making. For myself on the track, in that video that I posted earlier of me going around the track with Max chasing me, he's a much faster rider than me. Even though on the straights, you can see I take off way faster than he does. So on the track, I think it's really more about having good riding skills and suspension than it is raw power. So I'm honestly pretty satisfied with the amount of power that this bike is making at the moment. Anyway, it's been fun to make this a track bike, because while it had sat in my garage for 6 months or so, hardly being ridden at all, it's now one of the bikes that I probably spend the most amount of time on. And just about every weekend now, I'm looking forward to getting to the track and becoming a better track rider. Also, check out Lex D. Fox's channel. I'll link directly in the description below to his content. He's got a lot of good content, both on the Groms as well as the Benelli, and he's also doing some Supermoto stuff. So anyway, thank you everybody very much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos and keep on building.